Hey everybody, Mark Herman, aka LA Bengal fan on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, repping the Bengals. And once again, I am joined by Sam Schneider from Primetime Sports, and we are going to do a Week 2 preview of our Thursday Nitro game against the Browns.
Really excited to be here, Mark. Thanks for having me again, man.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So let's jump right in. First of all, any closing thoughts we might have about about Sunday's game? I mean, we've had time to kind of process it, digest it. Any last minute comments or?
I think the only thing I'd say is, again, like we talked about on Sunday, it was overall an encouraging thing. I don't think anybody thought we were just going to turn around and go to the Super Bowl this year. It was a disappointing loss, and that stinks. But there was a lot to build on and a lot moving forward. And now, man, we just flip it around and go straight to Thursday night.
Yeah. Well, I've talked to a lot of different people, a lot of non-Bengal fans, other teams fans, got a lot of commiseratory emails and texts from Cowboy fans who had basically had the same ending to their game that we had, which made me feel a little better, only that if it happened to the Cowboys, I really felt picked on. It was like typical Bengals not getting the call. And then when it happened to the Cowboys, so it was, I'm not going to say misery loves company, but at least maybe this is the new – we saw holding penalties down. Maybe this is going to be the new area of enforcement this year. We're going to see a lot of OPIs. Every year there seems to be the popular penalty to call, or we're stressing this safety feature. So maybe we're going to see more of that, but it's just a shame that we had basically a storybook ending we could have had.
Yeah, and it's worth throwing in there that everybody seems to forget from one year to the next that week one is always really strange. It's always really strange. You've always got teams coming back. You've always got favored teams losing. I'm not saying this loss doesn't mean anything. Of course it does. But we saw a lot of good things. And as a Bengal fan, you have to look at it as, what do we got going forward? And I think we've got good stuff going forward.
Yeah. And talk about weird week. I mean, Jacksonville beats Indianapolis. San Francisco loses to the Cardinals. And the one that surprised me the most, because I stopped watching it, was Philadelphia. I watched portions of the first half of that game. They were handily in charge of that game. And I looked back at a couple parlay cards that I lost, and I said, wait, how did this one lose? And it was the Eagles choking. I mean, I had just kind of already notched that win up. I think that was the biggest surprise of all, was what Washington was able to do. So it was a weird week, but let's jump into this week. Go ahead.
You always get that in week one. It never fails.
Yeah. So I was a little bold, I think, in the last video when I said I thought we were going to – I was just – the Browns didn't impress me and all this. And then I'm looking back. I watched some of the first half again, and I also looked at some of the stats, and the Hunt Chubb duo was able to crank out 130-plus yards against the Ravens defense, and that's a stout defense. So with the injuries we're coming into this game, we don't have Daniels now, and they're holding out Geno one more week, which makes sense because you get the extra bye week. It's basically another 11 days of rest for him, or 10 days. So it's a mini bye. So I get the Geno, but Daniel's not playing Hurts, and now I'm really concerned about how we're going to shut down the run with just Reader, and I don't know anything, in terms of this is a young kid, I think, that's the other defensive tackle. So.
Yeah, I think it's a tough go because Geno is definitely not only going to miss this week, he's definitely going to miss at least one more. I would say probably two more. It's one of those kind of not mysterious injuries, but one of those where they don't tell you fully what's going on with the guy. But I heard from a source that it sounded like the fear was if he had one wrong hit or one wrong fall, he'd be gone for the season. So they're holding him out for that reason. Otherwise, he could play through this injury.
Right.
So obviously, I understand that. You don't want to lose him for 16 games. You'd rather just lose him for 4 or maybe even 5.
Right.
And Mike Daniels being out, man, that hurts a lot. I'm glad Reeder is still in there. I assume, but I'm not entirely positive about the rotation. I assume that Christian Covington is going to get the majority of the snaps in the middle next to Reeder. But if you'll entertain me for a second, I have a very good friend who always talks about how the Bengals are probably moving in the direction of a 3-4 defense. And not because of the strength of linebackers, but because of, if you look at our offseason and the number of defensive ends that we've added that can creep up to the line and stand at the line, not playing defensive tackle, just coming up in and doing that old Patriots thing where you've got 6 guys on the line, you have no idea what anybody's going to do.
Right. You don't know who's coming across.
Exactly. And so his argument is that we're moving to that. And I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know what Zach Taylor or Anarumo's ideas are, but this would be the perfect situation to start trying something like that. You've got some young linebackers and you've got some talented defensive ends that you keep rotating in and out when you've got Hubbard and Dunlap on either end, and you're rotating in Lawson and a bunch of these other guys that you've picked up. So I don't know. I mean, it might be worth seeing.
Well, you can slide Hubbard in a little bit or slide Dunlap in a little bit, and you can put Lawson at the end. He had a really good game. He had some really good numbers. So, and maybe kind of create something along the lines of, the Giants, when they won the Super Bowl and beat New England, they basically had 4 defensive ends, on their line. They didn't have a true nose tackle, I don't think, in that group. I mean, Strahan was probably the most, and he was still a defensive end. He was the most nose tackle type of the group, but he wasn't a nose tackle. So we'll see. Hopefully we can scheme our way out of this one. Baker Mayfield still is making, and this is what I was talking about on our Sunday wrap-up recap, was he's still making mistakes he made 2 years ago. If you pressure him, he's still making mistakes. He's still forcing throws. I heard Jimmy Johnson in an interview say, because they were asking Jimmy Johnson specifically about Burrow and then about Baker Mayfield, and he was saying how, Burrow is already not making some of the mistakes that he saw that Baker Mayfield is still making after 2 years. And he also commented that Baker Mayfield might think he's more athletic than he is. And they should try to reel him in a little bit. I guess that was more of a suggestion to going forward. But if we can get pressure on Baker, we need to force some mistakes. One of the reasons, with everything that happened on Sunday, even with the call, we win that game if we don't turn the ball over. We lost the turnover ratio. I mean, we had 1 fumble and 1 interception. They both cost us, and we didn't force any. But if we can force them, if we can win the turnover battle Thursday, I think that'll be really big and a big step towards winning the game Thursday night.
I agree, and I think that you hit the nail on the head with Baker. He's obviously a really talented dude, and there's no denying that. But there's a point where cockiness overrides ability. And I think the difference between Baker and Burrow, well, I mean, we don't know for sure because we haven't seen much of Burrow yet. But I do know for sure that Baker is way more cocky than he should be. And he's not comfortable being a system quarterback, and he's not comfortable not changing plays, and he's not comfortable not trying to be the gunslinger that throws the ball, down the field and risks the interception, which, if you're Brett Favre, that pays off. If you're Baker Mayfield, does it? I don't know.
It hasn't yet.
Yeah, it hasn't yet, except for, the last several games of his rookie year, he played well. But even then, the talent on the opposition was not anything terribly amazing to speak of. So, yeah, and I'll segue right into this. We didn't have hardly any turnovers against the Chargers, but Tyrod Taylor doesn't turn the ball over. Austin Eckler didn't drop the ball. Um, but we were in the right place at the right time. We had a lot of guys in the right place at the right time. We made some really big hits, and I'd be really, really surprised if that was the Browns that we played last week, if a couple of those balls didn't hit the ground.
Yeah, I agree. So, well, we're getting a little bit. They're a little banged up on the secondary. So on the offensive side, if we look at that, we should be able to. Kevin Johnson's out and Greedy Williams is out, and they've lost 2 linebackers as well. So they're a little soft up in the middle and in the secondary. They're not that deep. And we do have. We were talking about this before we started recording, but we were talking about how questionable is the new probable. In that there's a bunch of guys listed, two offensive linemen. But they're both listed as questionable. They practiced today in a limited capacity. That's probably means they're going to play. So with questionable being the new probable. So
yeah. Conklin is out, I think, for sure. J.C. Treader, the starting center, who's also the NFLPA president, it looks like he's probably out. So there should be an opportunity for our defensive line here. And as far as their secondary goes, it's not too much different as last week. And they got kind of eaten alive by Lamar Jackson. So, hopefully we can take advantage of the same situation.
yeah, I would hope that we could watch some of the footage because with Lamar scrambling, one of the things Burrow showed us was he's more than capable of running the football. I don't want to see him take hits and do that, but at times he showed that he is well able to recognize when it's a possibility for him to run and go ahead and call that play. So hopefully maybe they can see something on film this week, from last week's game that'll help him out this week. So, well, I know I'm a homer in terms of predicting the score. I really, really would like to get to 1-1. I do realize this is a road game. I do realize I was really hoping that either we won or the Browns won. We won, so if we lost this game, we'd be 1-1. And the Browns winning, my big hope with the Browns was not only knocking out Baltimore, but I like catching teams off a win because they're not as hungry as a team trying to avoid 0-2, and we're both in that boat. So I'm going to say that we're able to figure something out offensively. I do expect Mixon to have a bigger role this week. I would like to see us, try to take a little pressure off of Burrow, maybe mix it up more, but get Mixon. That's also going to have to do with how our offensive line plays. But I'm going to go 20-16 Bengals. That's going to be my prediction.
I'd say that's a pretty good call. The Vegas line is 46. And my knee jerk when it came out was, it's over. We're going over because the Browns are pissed. Cincinnati is pissed. They're going to put up a lot of points. But it's a Thursday night football game.
I was going to say, it's not Sunday. It's Thursday night. So
it's a Thursday night football game and a short turnaround. Both teams have a lot of injuries, and it's also the AFC North. So either one is going to try to get a lead and control the ball. I'm going to say pretty close to what you said. My guess was 24-17, which would, be still under the 46. But I look for also fantasy wise. I look for Tyler Boyd to turn around this week.
Yeah.
There with the linebackers that are out, I'm looking for both slot receivers, Jarvis Landry and Tyler Boyd, to catch a lot of balls, pick up a lot of yards. For anybody out there who's watching that's trying to figure out what to do with their fantasy lineups. And I don't know for sure, but there's no way you can keep Boyd down the way he was kept down last week.
I was really surprised, looking back on the game on Sunday, 2 things really surprised me. Number one, that Boyd wasn't a bigger part of the game. And the second thing was, I talked about how much I dislike John Ross, but why wasn't Auden Tate in the game? He had such a great camp. He's great at the contested catch. I just really was surprised that Ross got so many snaps and Tate, I don't even think saw the field. I mean, if he was
and
out
not
there, he didn't get a target.
and
So
and not even just Tate, but Higgins. And I understand that Zach Taylor is leaning more on veterans than rookies, but even Higgins, he was out there for the potential green touchdown that got called back, but he was little more than a decoy.
right.
So I'd like to see him. I always kind of thought he'd just kind of be a red zone threat for most of this year, barring injury. But he also was not used much at all.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll see a change there. I'm starting Mixon. I have Mixon on my team fantasy wise. I also am in a league where we do individual defensive players. We don't have defensive teams, and I'm going to have Jesse Bates out there. I really think something's telling me that he's going to ball hawk something. I think we're going to get Baker. We're going to force Baker into something, and I'm picturing Bates just picking one off and getting a real nice return. So
I'll tell you what, Jesse is my man. And I think he should come up big this week. And but I really look for this. I really look for this as being the Joe Burrow coming out party. He played great in the fourth quarter. That could have been a coming out party, but I kind of see the Browns getting out to the early lead, and this time Burrow bringing it all the way back and saying, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, well, we talked at our last video. We talked about two chips on the shoulder on Mixon for having his first fumble since his rookie season, and no one's faulting him. I had over 620 carries without a fumble, and then Joe Burrow being pissed. Because like I said, he gave himself a D. Let's see what he gives himself after this week. Hopefully, it's a much better letter score.
Well,
So,
he turned right around and said, "I'm so glad that there's a game on Thursday because I wouldn't want to wait till Sunday to play."
yep. No, that's the attitude we want. So, all right. Well, with that, we will get a recap up, after the game on Thursday night, and Sam will be with me, so we'll get a recap up there. And with that, I want to say everybody stay safe, happy, healthy, Hoo Day, and we will see you Thursday, hopefully after a Bengal win. Take care, everybody.